My ambition is to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived.
That quote it stops you cold, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's not just the ambition to kill, it's the qualifier, she adds. Helpless people.
Exactly. It completely removes any idea of a challenge or a fight. It's pure predation. This isn't, a general on a battlefield. It's not a gangster taking out a rival.
No.
This was a woman named Jane Toppan. And what makes that, quote, infinitely darker, just so much worse, is her job. She's a nurse.
The ultimate betrayal. I mean, you go to a nurse when you are at your absolute weakest. You're literally putting your life in their hands.
Right. You're trusting them completely.
And this woman, everyone knew her as Jolly Jane. She was, by all accounts, bright, friendly, well-liked. If you were sick in Massachusetts in the late 1800s, she was the person you wanted by your bedside.
Bubbly, competent, and underneath it all, a monster who was quietly trying to become one of the most prolific serial killers in American history.
And maybe she was. I mean, given the timeline and the gaps in the records, she might have been one of the most successful, if you define success by just how long she got away with it.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the life of Jane Toppan. But we're not just going to run through a list of victims. Honestly, the list is terrifyingly long, and at a certain point, it just becomes numb.
Yeah, it becomes a statistic.
Exactly. We want to get at the how and the why. We want to look at the psychology, the systemic failures that let her operate for so long.
And we've pulled a lot of material for this. We have biographical details, court records, asylum intake logs from the time, and some really incredible newspaper accounts.
Yeah, the newspaper stuff is fascinating. We're looking at the Indianapolis Journal, the Lowell Sun, and of course the Hearst papers like the New York Journal.
And those papers give you the real-time reaction. You see a world just struggling to understand how a nurse, a sister of mercy, as they called them.
A sister of mercy.
Yeah. It could be this predator. They didn't even have the term serial killer back then. They were trying to map a new kind of evil.
So we're going to trace her story from this just Dickensian horror of a childhood in Boston, through the hospitals in Cambridge where she learned her dark trade, and then finally into her private practice where the whole thing just imploded.
It's a story of manipulation, of madness, and a terrifying ability to hide in plain sight. But to understand Jane Toppan, the killer, you really have to go back. You have to start before she was Jane Toppan.
You have to start with Honora Kelley.
That's where it all begins.
Okay, so Honora Kelley, born March 31st, 1854, in Boston. And before we even get into her family life, which is a whole other thing, we need to talk about Boston in the 1850s.
Yeah, you absolutely have to set the stage. This is post-famine. The city is flooded with Irish immigrants, and the social climate is, well, it's incredibly hostile.
No Irish need apply.
That wasn't just a slogan on a sign. It was economic reality. Poverty was rampant. Living conditions were awful, squalid.
So she's born into this marginalized, struggling community, and then her home life. Struggling doesn't even come close.
No, it was a catastrophe. Her mother, Bridget, died of tuberculosis when Honora was really young. TB, it was the scourge of the tenements.
So that leaves Honora and her sisters alone with their father, Peter Kelley.
And the sources on Peter Kelley are, well, he was known in the neighborhood as eccentric.
Which feels like a massive understatement.
A huge one. He was known as Kelley the Crack, as in crackpot. He was an abusive alcoholic, but his behavior went so far beyond that. There's one detail that it encapsulates the chaos of that home.
I know exactly the one you're talking about. It's the kind of thing that once you hear it, it just sticks in your brain.
He was a tailor.
Right.
And the story, which seems to be corroborated by the historical records, is that in some kind of fit, a psychotic break maybe, he took his needle and thread and sewed his own eyelids closed.
Let's just pause on that. I mean, just picture it. A man in a tenement with a tailor's needle, mutilating himself, and his young children are right there.
Think about what that teaches a 6-year-old. It teaches you that the human body is a mummet. It's just material. It's fabric. It can be altered. It can be controlled. It can be mutilated.
It totally desacralizes the body. If your own father can do that to himself, what are the rules? What are the boundaries for what can be done to other people?
There are no boundaries. It establishes this baseline of extreme violent instability. And then in 1860, Peter Kelley just checks out.
He takes Honora, who's 6, and her sister Delia, who's 8, and he walks them down to the Boston Female Asylum.
Which was an orphanage, not a mental institution. And the intake records are just so heartbreakingly bureaucratic. They just say the girls were, quote, rescued from a very miserable home.
And the abandonment is total.
Complete. He signs the papers, surrenders his rights, walks out, and never sees them again. He just erases them from his life.
And we should probably talk about the other siblings here because it brings up that whole nature versus nurture question. Was there some kind of madness gene in this family?
Well, it's a tragic story for all of them. The older sister, Nellie, she wasn't put in the orphanage, but she ended up being committed to an insane asylum later in life.
Oh.
And Delia, the one who went into the asylum with Honora, she reportedly fell into prostitution to survive after she aged out.
So it's just a string of tragedies. But Honora's path is different. On the surface, it almost looks like she got a lucky break.
It looks that way. 2 years later, 1862, she's placed out. She becomes an indentured servant for a woman named Anne C. Toppan in Lowell, Massachusetts.
And this is the pivot point. This is where Honora Kelley effectively dies, and Jane Toppan is born.
She takes the name Toppan. She eventually starts going by Jane. She's shedding that Kelley identity, the poverty, the madness, the father with the sewn eyes. But there's a huge catch.
She was never adopted.
Never. That distinction is everything. She was a servant. She lived in the house. She used their name. She called Mrs. Toppan mother. But legally, socially, she was the help.
And the Toppans had their own biological daughter, Elizabeth.
Right. So Jane and Elizabeth grow up together, side by side. And by all accounts, they got along. They were like foster sisters. But you have to imagine the constant daily psychological friction of that.
Absolutely. You're at the same dinner table. You might be wearing her hand-me-down clothes.
But you always know, and everyone else knows, she's the daughter, the heir, and you're the charity case.
It's proximity without belonging. She's close enough to see the life she wants, the status, the security, the love, but she's fundamentally locked out of it.
And that kind of status anxiety can breed a very specific, very cold kind of resentment. It fuels this idea that you've been cheated, that you're owed something. And it can lead you to see other people not as people, but as obstacles or tools.
And yet, for a while, she plays the part. She keeps it all under wraps. So let's fast forward a bit. It's 1883. Jane's in her late 20s now. She leaves the Toppan house and decides to become a nurse.
She starts training at Cambridge Hospital. And this is where that persona, Jolly Jane, really gets perfected.
It's a total reinvention, isn't it?
Completely. Her childhood teachers described her as brilliant and terrible, a liar, a troublemaker. But at the hospital, she's bright, friendly, and well-liked. She constructs this perfect mask of the bubbly, caring, competent nurse.
Jolly Jane. It sounds so harmless. It's the name of the nurse you'd want if you were sick. But while she's building this reputation with the staff, she's starting her experiments with the patients.
This is where the profile really starts to take shape, and it's specific. She didn't just target anyone. She would bond with them, especially the elderly and the very, very sick. She chose her favorites.
And favorite in Jane Toppan's world is a very dangerous thing to be.
A very dangerous thing, because it meant you were selected to be one of her guinea pigs. She started using patients for these bizarre pharmacological experiments. She wasn't just killing them outright, not yet. She was testing things.
Let's get into the specifics of that because the how is so important here. She was fascinated by a very particular combination of drugs.
Morphine and atropine.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't doctors, break that down. Why that combination? What does it do?
It's basically a physiological tug of war. Morphine is an opioid, a depressant. It slows everything down, your heart rate, your breathing. It constricts your pupils. It basically puts your body to sleep.
Okay.
Atropine does the exact opposite. It's a stimulant. It blocks the nerve that slows the heart so your heart rate speeds up. It dilates your pupils. It wakes everything up.
So you have one drug telling the body to shut down and another one screaming at it to wake up.
Precisely. She was creating a chemical war inside her patients. She'd give them a dose of morphine and watch them drift toward death, and then she'd hit them with a shot of atropine and yank them back.
My God. She was coggling them on and off like a light switch.
She wanted to see how close to the line she could take them. She was mapping the nervous system by torturing people to death. She'd spend hours alone in their rooms, falsifying the medical chart so no one would see the wild swings in their vitals.
And then there's the intimacy part of it.
Yeah.
The sources say she wouldn't just sit by the bed.
No. She would get into bed with them.
Just try to process that image. You're a patient, you're drugged, you're fading in and out of consciousness, and your nurse is climbing into your bed and holding you as you die.
It breaks every boundary imaginable, professional, social, physical. It speaks to this profound need for absolute control and this really perverse desire for closeness with death itself.
She wanted to feel the life leave them.
She wanted to be the only person in their world at that final moment. It's predatory in a way that's hard to even comprehend. And somehow, despite all this, despite patients crashing on her watch, she manages to fail upward.
That's shocking. In 1889, she gets recommended for a position at Massachusetts General Hospital.
Mass General, a top-tier, prestigious institution.
But she doesn't last there. She's fired the next year. She claimed later she killed people there, but there was no proof at the time.
So she goes back to Cambridge Hospital for a bit.
And gets dismissed from there, too. This time, the official reason is administering opiates recklessly.
Okay, we have to talk about that. Administering opiates recklessly. Today, that would be a career-ending event. You'd lose your license, there'd be an investigation, a huge paper trail. How does she just walk away from 2 major hospitals with that on her record?
Because it's 1890. There's no central nursing board. There's no digital database. There are no background checks.
Right. Hospitals were just these independent islands.
If a nurse was a problem, the hospital just wanted to get rid of her quietly to avoid a scandal. So they'd fire her, she'd walk out the door, and in the next town over, she's basically a clean slate.
It's the pass the trash phenomenon, but with lethal consequences. And honestly, getting fired was probably the best thing that could have happened for her. Quote unquote, ambition.
Because she moves into private nursing.
The perfect setup. No supervising doctors, no head nurse checking the charts at the end of a shift. It's just her, alone in a house with a vulnerable person.
It was the ideal hunting ground. She was charming, she was available, she was Jolly Jane. Families loved her because she seemed so devoted.
Of course they did. She'd stay up all night with the patient. They just didn't know why she was staying up all night.
And she flourished. Even with these constant complaints of petty theft that seemed to follow her everywhere, she built a successful career. But then, around 1895, something shifts. The goal changes from, curiosity and experimentation to just destruction.
The sources all point to 1895 as the year her spree began in earnest. She stops just toying with people and starts killing with clear intent, and her first major targets were her landlords.
Israel and Lovely Dunham, an elderly couple.
And their age is key. Israel was 83, Lovely was 87. When an 83-year-old man dies, nobody asks questions, nobody demands an autopsy. Jane knew that. She used their age as a shield.
So she was there for both of their deaths, playing the role of the grieving, devoted nurse.
She was. Israel died in May of 95. Lovely followed him in September of 97, and Jane just keeps going. But then in 1899, she does something that I think reveals the true depth of her psychopathy. It goes beyond the angel of mercy theory.
She kills her foster sister, Elizabeth Brigham.
This is the murder that complicates everything. Elizabeth wasn't a patient. She wasn't a landlord. She was her childhood companion. They were, by all accounts, friends.
So, why? What was the motive?
Jane went to visit her on Cape Cod, a little vacation. They had lunch, went for a walk on the beach, and then Jane gave her a dose of strychnine.
And let's talk about strychnines for a second. That's a departure from her usual morphine and atropine cocktail.
It is a brutal, brutal way to die. It's a convulsant.
Yeah.
It causes every muscle in your body to contract violently and at once. The victim is fully conscious, their back arches, they can't breathe because their diaphragm seizes up. It's absolute torture.
So this wasn't a gentle drifting away. This was rage. This was cruelty.
It suggests a very different emotional state. And the motive, the most common theory, is just pure distilled jealousy. Elizabeth had the life Jane always felt she deserved. She was a true Toppan. She had the status, the security.
So killing her was the ultimate act of leveling the playing field. If Jane couldn't have that life, then neither could Elizabeth.
Or maybe the urge to kill had just become so overwhelming that things like friendship or family didn't even register as concepts anymore.
Which fits with what she said later about that paralysis of thought.
Exactly. After Elizabeth, it's like the dam just breaks. The body count skyrockets. Between 1899 and 1900, you have Mary McNear, a patient, William Ingram, another patient, Sarah Connors, who was a patient and a friend.
The Sarah Connors one is interesting because Jane wanted her job.
Yes, Sarah had a good position at a theological school, and Jane coveted it. So she just eliminated the competition. It's ruthless. But the most calculating Machiavellian plot has to be the one involving Florence Calkin.
Oh, this story it's just next-level manipulation. It just shows that she could be so incredibly strategic.
It's amazing. So Florence Calkins was the housekeeper for a wealthy family. Jane wanted that job. But she didn't just walk in and kill Florence.
No, she did something much more subtle.
She started giving Florence small doses of poison, just enough to make her seem drunk and incompetent, slurring her words, stumbling.
So the family sees this. They assume their housekeeper is a secret alcoholic and they fire her.
And who was right there to step in and save the day, Jolly Jane. She says, "Oh, you poor dears, let me help you out." She takes the job, gets inside the house.
And then starts killing the family she's now working for.
It's just so predatory. She's using poison as this multi-purpose tool. She used it to kill, to disable, to frame people, and the sources say she even used it on herself.
The self-poisoning. That's a whole other layer of pathology.
Oh, it is. It's like a form of Munchausen syndrome.
Yeah.
If she was dating a man and wanted attention or sympathy, she'd ingest a little poison herself.
Just enough to make her look sick and frail.
Exactly, to trigger that protective instinct. She weaponized sickness in every possible direction. It shows you that she viewed bodies, her own and everyone else's, as nothing more than props in her own personal drama.
Which brings us to 1901. And the Davis family massacre, and I use that word massacre because there's really no other way to describe it. This is where she goes from being a serial killer to a family annihilator.
It's the climax of her killing career, and the speed of it is just breathtaking. This is where the organized, careful killer starts to become disorganized and frantic.
So set the scene. How does this all start?
It starts with the death of Mattie Davis in July of 1901. Mattie was the wife of an elderly, respected man named Alden Davis. Jane was caring for Mattie and murdered her.
And then, in a move that is just pure horror movie stuff, she moves in with grieving widower Alden.
Moves right into the Davis home to take care of him. The fox is officially in the henhouse.
And within weeks, that entire family is just gone. The timeline is insane.
It is. Mattie dies on July 4th. Then one of the daughters, Genevieve Gordon, comes to visit her grieving father. She dies on July 30th.
Less than a month later.
Then the patriarch, Alden Davis himself, he dies on August 8th.
And finally, the other daughter, Mary, who they called Minnie Gibbs.
She dies on August 13th, just 5 days after her father.
So that's 4 members of one family in about 6 weeks. Not to mention a sister-in-law, Edna Bannister, who had died a couple of months earlier in June while Jane was around. She just wiped out an entire family tree in one summer.
And that's often what gets them, isn't it? That acceleration, they get sloppy, or maybe the high from the kill becomes so addictive that the cooling off period just disappears.
She was killing them faster than they could hold the funerals.
And that's what finally did it. The surviving family members, the husbands of the dead sisters, they finally looked at this string of bodies and said, this isn't possible. This is not bad luck.
It's statistically impossible.
So they ordered a toxicology exam on Minnie Gibbs, the last one to die.
And by 1901, toxicology is a real science.
It's not guesswork anymore. They tested her tissues and the results came back positive. Morphine and atropine.
The smoking gun.
The Angel of Mercy mask finally slips off and the authorities get involved. She's arrested on October 29th, 1901.
So she's arrested, she's in custody, and this takes us to the interrogation. Now, you'd expect denial, right? I didn't do it, they were old, it was natural causes.
That's what you'd expect. But Jane Toppan, she couldn't wait to talk.
She starts confessing.
Oh, yeah. She confesses to 31 murders.
31. And let's be clear, the number they could actually prove in court, the confirmed count, was 12.
12. But she's claiming 31, and the suspected number, based on her time in the hospitals and her private practice, is well over 100.
It's just staggering. So, okay, we have the confession, we have the famous ambition quote. Now, we have to really dig into the why. We've touched on it, but let's unpack the psychology here. Because she doesn't fit neatly into any one box.
No, she doesn't. She fits the broad Angel of Mercy archetype, the caregiver who kills. But that's usually about power, about playing God. With Jane, there was this very prominent, very disturbing sexual component.
The sources are pretty explicit about this part of her confession.
They are. She told investigators she derived a sexual thrill from the murders. She said she would fondle her victims as they died. She got a thrill from watching them get close to death, bringing them back with the atropine, and then letting them go again.
It's that yo-yo effect again, the ultimate power trip.
And the intimacy. The act of getting into bed with them, holding them close as they died. She wanted to feel that final spark go out.
And there's that other quote about wanting to see the inner workings of their souls through their eyes. It sounds almost poetic, but it's really just profound narcissism.
It is. The victim stops being a person. They become a mirror, a window for her to look through. They're just props in her private psychodrama.
And when she was asked about her motivation, she didn't talk about rage or anger. She used a very strange phrase.
A paralysis of thought and reason.
What do you make of that?
I find that fascinating. She described it as this simple, overwhelming urge to poison. like a compulsion she couldn't resist. It wasn't that she was angry at Alden Davis or Minnie Gibbs. They just happened to be there when the urge struck. It sounds like an impulse control disorder mixed with extreme sadism.
So the trial becomes this huge media circus. William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal is all over it. The headlines are just sensational.
The modern Borgia, the poison fiend. And Jane is eating it up. She's loving the attention. But she also has this really bizarre legal strategy.
The insanity defense. But she tries to use it in reverse.
Exactly. Normally, the defense team pleads insanity to avoid the death penalty. Jane's great fear wasn't execution. It was the asylum.
Because of her sister Nellie and her father, the asylum was the ultimate family curse in her mind. It was failure.
Total failure. She was terrified of being locked away forever with no hope of release. She actually thought that if she were found sane and convicted of murder, she might eventually get pardoned. At least she'd be in a prison, not a madhouse.
So she gets up in court and basically argues, I can't be insane because I knew what I was doing was wrong.
She tried to use her own moral culpability as proof of her sanity. It's a logic pretzel. I'm not crazy, I'm just evil.
It's a bold move. Did it work?
Not at all. The jury looked at the evidence, the sheer scale of the killing, the wiping out of entire families, the sexual component, and on June 23rd, 1902, they came back with the verdict. Not guilty by reason of insanity.
So she gets the one thing she feared most.
She gets exactly what she feared. Committed for life to the Taunton Insane Hospital.
And she lived there for a very, very long time.
She did. She lived until August 17th, 1938. She died at the age of 84. She spent almost 4 decades locked away.
And the accounts from her later years are just
sad
and strange. She became intensely paranoid.
She was convinced the staff was trying to poison her food.
Which is just a classic case of projection, isn't it?
Of course. She knew what nurses were capable of, so she assumed everyone was just like her. She died a heavy, delusional old woman, completely cut off from the world she'd terrorized.
So when we look back on this whole story, what's the big takeaway? I mean, beyond the obvious, don't let your nurse climb into bed with you.
I think the biggest takeaway is about the camouflage of care. Jane Toppan understood instinctively that society has this built-in bias. We see a nurse's uniform and we think, benevolent, trustworthy. She used that bias like a weapon.
It's the ultimate cognitive dissonance. The idea of a killer nurse is so hard to process that people they don't see it, even when it's happening right in front of them.
And she exploited the lack of institutional memory, the fact that she could get fired from Mass General for being reckless with opiates and then just walk into a private home and kill an entire family. It's a stunning indictment of the system at the time.
It really makes you think about the vulnerabilities of that pre-digital age.
Which brings us to a really uncomfortable closing thought.
Yeah. Jane Toppan was caught. But she was only caught because she got sloppy. She got greedy. She killed too many people too fast in one place. But she operated for nearly 20 years before that.
And her stated ambition was to kill more helpless people than anyone who ever lived. She was stopped. But you have to ask yourself, in an age before digital records, before background checks, before toxicology was standard.
How many other Jolly Janes were out there?
That's the question, isn't it? How many other caregivers in 1890 or 1920 or even 1950 sat by a bedside, gave a little too much morphine, held a hand, and just got away with it?
Their ambitions quietly fulfilled in the privacy of a sick room with nobody ever knowing.
We will never know the true number, and that, I think, is the most terrifying part of this whole story.
Well, on that note, I think that's all for this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.